We need all these different things on here. And so we dutifully added them because a client was saying, hey, this is really important and I really need this, and we're Uber, by God, and we need you to send this over. And so we went out and built it. And suddenly our delightful, beautiful, incredible product experience with great scalability and great business viability turned into complexity. And it's pretty natural. And let's talk about a couple of examples of this. By the way, no one should get their feelings hurt or feel like, Jack talking about me in this conversation. If anything, I'm talking about me, all right? Because ultimately, the CEO has to take responsibility for all the things that happen here. And so this is a chance for us to do a little bit of a reset here and say, hey, I think our product has gotten too complex. It's not quite to the Swiss Army knife that looks like that, but maybe it's getting a little bit like that. And maybe it's getting a little harder for people to use, harder for new prospects to understand. And we are starting to lose some sales because people go, man, it looks really powerful, but also looks really complicated. We had a little trouble understanding what we were supposed to do with it. And customers who say, it really doesn't give me the utility that I was looking for. It's too many clicks. It's hard to use. It's this and that. So how do we change that? Let's talk about a couple things that naturally just developed over the years. Our original way of filtering strings, this was our original filter. We had a keyword search. But sometimes we need a couple extra things. So we had this little drop down here, just like Google does on Gmail. And when you clicked on that, you got something that looked a little bit like this, a handful of filters. Don't worry about what the filters were, but there were a couple filters that you could do some things with. And then suddenly people said, well, I need 3 more filters. And this thing got a little bit longer. And then people said, I needed more filters, and it got a little longer. And then we actually had to burst it out horizontally because we were running out of room. You had to actually scroll to get to the filters. And then people said, well, some of these filters I use all the time. Can you surface these up to the top? And we ended up with that filter being pulled out, and that filter being pulled out, and that filter being pulled out from here. Man, that's a lot of filters. I mean, this one right here alone is 3 different ones. This is a handful of different filters here, plus all of these right here. That's confusing in and of itself to be able to do that. So maybe now is the time, as one simple example, for us to say, can we take something that perhaps has gotten a bit unfocused, and we're in our haste and our striving to delight and satisfy our customers, that we go back and do a little bit of a reset and say, hey, is it time for us to adjust how we do our filters? What are some examples of the kinds of things the kinds of filters, the kinds of services that you might use in your everyday life that have a tremendous number of filters, and what have they done? How about Amazon? How about Kayak or Travelocity? You know, those are companies that have a massive number of filters, and they are dynamic and they change. Obviously here I'm searching for a phone of some sort. Obviously here I'm searching for a certain flight to certain cities and so on. But you know, a huge number of filters, and there are good examples where you know, there are other things in the wild where people are used to using these kinds of filters that are by their very nature complex, but our job as a product-focused, customer experience-focused company is to find the best ways to capture that power and complexity and then simplify it as much as possible into the product experience. Good example? Yeah, maybe? Okay, that's one example. Let's talk more about sort of simplification and focus. So for a variety of good and probably not so good reasons, let's look at a couple parts in our actual application today. In our actual application today, we have things where, you know, over on the left-hand side in the left-hand navigation, the most important navigation elements that we have today, we have a style guide and glossary. But guess what? We also have them up here in the assets. We've got style guide and we've got glossaries. We really want people to know about those style guides and glossaries. You're going to get to them one way or another. We're going to make you look at those things either way. Let's look at reports. Reports over here, I've got processed words, issues, smart match leverage, fuzzy match, word counts. Over here, I've got processed words, issues, smart match leverage, words under management, and so on. We really want you to run these reports. One way or another, you're going to run these reports. So maybe there's a point where we can, let's see if there's other examples of this. You know, maybe there's a point where we can start to consolidate and start to focus and simplify the experience here. You know, is there duplication? Are there places where, look, there's actually some good reasons why some of this stuff happens. This happens to be a GDN project, so we've got a couple reports that are specific and unique to a GDN project. I get it, but can you imagine as a new user, you're like, well, what's the difference between this processed words and that processed words right there? You know, over across the top of the The most important navigation, I would argue, from a product perspective, are the things that probably appear at the top of every single thing: projects, assets, team, API reports, and settings. These are all sort of global, but if I actually look at what we have determined to be one of the most important menu items that we have on here is the API. Let's look at what that does for us. Just tells me my tokens. Probably not going to use that a whole lot. Probably not something I'm going to use every single time that I'm there. So are there some ways that we can smartly consolidate and focus and simplify and take all of those knives of the Swiss Army knife and get to the ones that we really absolutely need, not because we were making a bet as to whether we could stick a nail clipper on the end of it, because we lost a bet, or because we were challenged and thought, how much shit can we stick into a 2-pound sock, something along those lines. So what I'm encouraging us to do, and I'm encouraging the product team to do, and by the way, there's a tremendous amount of work that's happening behind the scenes right now from all of the product members and a number of the tech team members to really think about this right now. I'm just the guy that's lucky enough to be able to present this grand vision, and at the end of this, you're going to hear from Andrew if he finishes up his Google meeting, from Max, from Katya, on some of their points of view about how to actually do this. So I'll lay out the vision, but let's talk about navigation. Even some of these things, style guide and glossary, we know belong up in assets. Patterns probably doesn't belong in its own dedicated thing over here. Estimates is part of a job process here. Even the project settings right here. Do I really need to focus my sign-on setting, my single sign-on settings here, or my custom dashboard? Fuzzy match is part of my asset configuration. External translation is part of an integration. I'm going to actually argue that we can actually eliminate every single one of these navigation items, every single one. I'm going to lay out that vision right now about where I'd like us to go as a company from a product perspective. And the reason I'm sharing this is so that people can go, okay, I know what the destination is. We're trying to get to the beach. What are all the things that we need to do to get to the beach? We got to get a bathing suit. We got to pack the car. We got to throw the kids in the car. We got to get directions. We got to get a snack. We got to do all those things knowing that we're trying to get to the beach. So I'm going to lay out what that beach destination looks like right here. So let's go back to my presentation here, and let's talk about the complexity of creating a job. So I think in a translation management system, one of the most basic things that you should be able to do is put files into a system and then get a quote. I want to put 3 or 4 files into the system. Let's suppose I'm doing it manually. 80% of our customers do it through automation, which is great. We want to get it even closer to 100%. But if I ever say I've got 5 files that I want to drag in to get translated for a job, either for my mobile app or for a conference I've got coming up, or for any number of different things, some sort of marketing materials, I want to put those in there and I want to get a quote. I want to know how much is it going to cost, so then I can do either 3 things. I can go, yep, let's do it. I can say, whoa, wasn't expecting it to be that much. Let me make a couple changes here, tweak a couple languages or files, or let me cancel and say, not going to do it right now. One of those 3 things. Yes, let's do it. Let me make a couple changes, then we'll do it, or no thanks, not going to do it. Upload files, get a quote. And in self-service, I actually think we do a really lovely job of this. Now, this is an order. It's a little different than a job. Max can talk about the specific details I probably can't cover and the difference between these from an object perspective. But here we have, I'm uploading some files into the system, a Microsoft Word file. Then I get my a really simple workflow. Am I going to use professional translation? Am I going to use professional editing? I specify a couple of different languages, nice little breakdown of what it's going to look like. I can even see that I've got a credit balance, and I can see the credit card on file. Now, if I want to make a change, I can say, actually, I don't want to do Spanish, or I want to change it to editing, or I do want to do it, and then boom, I'm ready to go. Not bad, right? Upload files, get a quote, make a decision, right? Now, let's talk about enterprise. Again, please, nobody get your toes stepped on here. I'm sort of almost doing this more for humor value. So here's what we're going to do to get uploaded some files and create a job. I upload and create my job right here. I then wait for those files come in. I wait for the job to process. I see the ... dots while it crunches, an awful lot of number crunching that goes on behind the scenes to be able to do it. Then I see that the numbers have been crunched, but I still don't know what it's going to cost me and whether I actually want to do it. So in order to do that, then I click on, should I click on the authorize button? No, I've got to be smart enough to click on the little ... and then click on estimate and run the estimate. And then this thing comes out from the side, shoots out here. Still don't know what it's going to cost. Then I click on the create estimates. And then when I click on create estimate, then I get this eyesore monstrosity where I've got to go through every one of these things and specify a workflow. And then I get something right here that I've got to know to click on the folder. And when I click on the folder, then up comes my thing with a lot of complexity that I'm sure some client really insisted that, by God, we've got to have this thing. But I have never understood why a client wants to see this breakdown across all of their different languages at this level of detail in order to make a decision about this part of it. I do think they want to see the words, the weighted words, which is a really good proxy for how much it's going to spend, and some sort of estimate number from there. And then again, just for laugh factor, if I mistakenly click on that triangle, then I get this terrible, terrible dialogue that is just awful. So this is complexity that we've developed. I mean, that is the hippopotamus, magnifying glass, leather punch, Swiss Army knife all combined into and taking away from the beautiful utility of the Swiss Army knife that we showed at the beginning of the presentation here. Now, there's other complexity. It's just a lot of this is just the nature of 7.5 years of working on this stuff, and that's okay. And let's talk about the fact that from the very beginning, the SmartLink product was designed to be a GDN implementation that was designed to pull strings and parse content and prove to the world that we knew how to take a big page of structured, messy content data in an XML, HTML, XHTML format and parse it into individual strings with linguistic purity and be able to present those strings where people take actions and say, yep, let me review that. But in the real world, people don't like having to go make choices string by string. Yeah, translate that one. Yeah, translate this string. Yes, let's translate that string. I invited Chiara here to see this for the first time because she probably uses the product on a day-to-day basis more than anybody else in the company, is my guess, because she's actually acting as an extension of our clients where they say, hey, we don't want to hire a localization professional full-time. We want Chiara to act as our extension of our company and actually process these things. And if you look carefully at her fingers, her mouse finger has a blister on the clicking and the things that she's doing there. And a lot of it is because we started out with this string-focused point of view that we can pull these strings in and then you can do certain things and make decisions about those strings. But the world operates in a bucket of strings. Nobody wants to deal with strings unless you're literally going in and adding a specific instruction or excluding an individual string. They want to operate one level above, a folder of strings, a bucket of strings, a bucket of files. And that's really where jobs came about. Let's talk about jobs. No, I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the project, the really incredible project that we worked on for a very, very long time in this company that has built an extraordinary underlying engine, a beautiful, incredible engine that is able to take a massive amount of strings and content, move those strings through workflows. You can have different target languages, different balances of strings to be able to track and measure and record and act on all of these things, all bucketed together into a handy collection of content and data. It is an incredible engine. And only right now are we in a position where we can start to expose that incredible functionality, and give our customers the user interfaces that allow them to appreciate it and understand the beautifulness, the beauty of this underlying jobs engine. We need to build the Tesla. Yes, I'm aware that I mixed my metaphors there with a combustion engine and an electric car. I get it. But the point is, this is a beautiful, gorgeous car. How many people have ridden in a Tesla? It is unbelievable inside. The experience of it is extraordinary. It's not just that it's an electric car. It's not just that it goes 0 to 60 faster than any combustion engine car out there. It has an incredible engine, but it also is gorgeous. It's sexy. It's beautiful. It's something that has great user experience and great utility. And now is the time when we can take this incredible project that we worked on. It took a long time. It was hard. It burnt a lot of people out. But we've done it. And we're migrating all of our customers over to it. And now how do we expose the functionality so people can really take advantage of it? So some thoughts on this. Number one, everything goes in a job. Everything goes in a job. That is one of the core mantras here. Everything goes into a job from now on. Like the moment we finish migrating people over, and we have 90 customers who don't use jobs at all. Why? Maybe because it's too hard, maybe they don't need it, maybe whatever, but everything goes into a job, period. There is no concept of loose strings or orphan files anymore. And there's some cleanup we're going to have to do with this. We're going to have to figure out what do we do with all those loose strings and all those orphaned files that aren't part of a job. I have some ideas. Those ideas range from every file goes into its own unique job through everything goes into one job. But I'm confident that the product and tech team are going to figure out the right way to do this. But we do not want orphan strings. We do not want orphaned files. You know, if you looked around at somebody's desk and you saw a stack of just piles and piles of papers, I should have gone and found a great picture of this, like a really messy desk of papers everywhere. What would you want to do with those things? You want to organize them and put them into folders. People want folders. People want a bucket to carry these things around in. No loose strings, no orphaned files. The GDN is going to present a challenge with this because the GDN is by its nature string focused. But if you think about it, it's kind of not. We have things called, you know, request URL and request data URL, right? I think, do we still call them that maybe? Is that seven years ago? All right, I just pulled that out of the top of my head. You know, but those are buckets. Those are folders that contain those strings. One of them is a snapshot of a particular page and one of them is the URL. And maybe what the answer is that when the GDN generates strings, it automatically bundles things together into a job based on a request URL or a request data URL bundling. Or maybe every 10 minutes, our job automation sweeper comes through and grabs those strings, and you just don't get to see the content for 10 minutes or an hour or whatever else until it gets bundled into a job. I don't love that one quite as much because it's not as exciting for sales demos when you go, well, give it an hour and then the strings will be here and they'll all bundled up nice. But there are some ways that we can solve this, but everything has to go into a job, and the GDN is one of the challenges. All right, I want to lay out a bit of a vision with all of that said. How many people got their feelings hurt so far? Nobody, I hope? Nobody got their toes stepped on? Is he talking about me? Austin, I am talking about you. Come on, Austin. All right, so let's talk about vision. Again, this is something that Andrew Sachs, Katya, Max, the rest of the product team, Jeremy, Greg, a bunch of people have been working on this vision, and I want to present it today. I get the luxury and the honor of presenting it. And so I hope that you will see this as this is where we're going. We need to have a conversation about product experience driven products and development versus technology driven. And these are hard things. These are hard things to talk about. And I would argue that you know, some of the things that we've done have been super product focused. Hey, let's build this incredible product experience that is delightful and awesome. But if we do that and it doesn't scale and it doesn't have performance, then we have failed. And I would argue that there are things that we've done where we've built things that are back end and technology driven first, and the product experience has probably suffered as a result of that. I would argue that you know, the create a job, get a quote that I just showed, that's, you know, 23 steps of craziness on the enterprise thing probably was driven by technology, back end sort of, this is what the back end APIs do, now let's layer, you know, some buttons and text on top of that, and probably frankly was also driven a little bit too much by our clients rather than us having a vision to say this is the right way to do this, balancing these two things. And I would actually argue that there's three things that we need to balance. We need to balance customer-focused product experience with scalable performance with a sustainable business. Those are the three things. We know how to build great product. This really is a world-class product team, and we know how to build great product that is customer-focused, that has the right product experience for the end users. We also know how to build scalable, performant back-end systems. We have a world-class technology team. We know that. Look at what Uber did yesterday. Without an announcement, they basically said, we're going to give you 34 minutes of a fire drill stress test with no warning. And we were just like, oh, wake us up when it's over. We took care of it. That's awesome. That is incredible. We need those two things to be combined. And we also need a sustainable business. And so let's run through a couple different scenarios. If we build a beautiful, incredible design, totally understandable, incredible user experience that's intuitive, but it doesn't perform well, it's not scalable, it's slow, anybody throws any kind of volume at us and we choke on it, that's bad. If we build really great scalable performant applications without great front-end experiences for the user, that's bad. And if we build both of those things, but it takes 7 years or 12 years or 42 years to get that right, guess what? We don't have a sustainable business. And so finding the right balance between these things and making sure we're right in this happy little triangle right in the middle is really, really important for us right here. And, without bearing the lead, when we talk about this vision in just a second, and when Max and Andrew and so on talk about all the different ways that we're going to do this, we're not going to do big, huge, high-risk, year-long projects and hope for the best at the end of it. That burns people out. Things change. Customers give feedback. We're going to take that and we're going to slice it up one bite at a time, and we're going to move to faster projects that are more agile, that get out there faster, knowing that this is what we're driving towards, because that is the sustainable business part of this. We can't do year-long projects to do this. They're too costly. They're too painful. We might get them wrong. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the vision here. All right, so number one, what's a project? This is the part to really pay attention to here in this next part, because we're going to show some really nice, pretty pictures and some mock-ups that Katya's done a great job on. All right, so let's talk about what is a project. What is a project in our system today? We might actually rename that a name called Workspace. So the SmartLink project as it exists today, we may rename Workspace. Don't worry, we're not renaming all the APIs and things like that. But from a concept, it really is it's a workspace. And for those of you who remember when we completely decoupled linguistic assets from projects, there was a time in this company when a project was a translation memory, was a glossary, was a style guide. That's why that stuff still exists in the left-hand navigation, but we decoupled it. That's the right solution. It's completely decoupled as a completely separate service that can then be grouped and coupled back together as part of a project, or what will likely at some point in the future be renamed a workspace. And so what is this project workspace? It really is, think of it as a bucket or a box. It's a box that's going to connect a particular type of integration. What type of workspace is this? Well, it's my HubSpot integration. It's my marketing website. It's my mobile app. It's my set of content we're doing for our conference in Tokyo next year that we're working on right here. It's a box containing a particular type of integration, and it's going to contain jobs. Jobs are going to be lightweight things that I'll talk about in just a minute. It's all the things that we built. Jobs are lightweight strings and projects that are going to be translated into certain languages. It's going to connect decoupled linguistic assets, style guide, glossary, translation memories, and all the configurations around it. It's going to connect teams. Right now, teams are not decoupled, and it's a pain point. And Austin's working on some stuff right now around teams, which is pretty awesome. He's working with a handful of tech people as well on this. That is pretty awesome about how do we build the next generation of team management and have it completely decoupled so that you can join them together instantly when you create a project or a workspace. It's going to have a budget. That's a real pain point for customers. What they really want is, let me put a bunch of content in, let me understand how much it's going to cost, and then let me see what my budget looks like, just like we do in our everyday life. How much money do I have left in my checking account here? It's going to have a source language, because that's really important, and that's something that we understand that for these types of projects, they have to have one source language. Need to have multiple source languages? Different projects or workspaces. But guess what it doesn't need? It doesn't need a target language. We don't need to specify at the moment that we create this target languages. That's a holdover from the GDN. So a couple of you are scratching your heads going, really? But think about this. That's a holdover from the GDN where we needed to know the target languages in order to know that we needed to render the French site and the Spanish site and the German site on this. But as a concept, I don't need to know the target language here. The minute somebody says, I want to translate something into French, we go, okay, great. Is there a TM associated with that linguistic asset? There is, great, I'll use it. There's not, great, I have an empty one that I'm starting with from here. There should be no issue with adding new target languages anytime that we want to. And again, this is sort of the holdover and complexity. How do we take all the stuff that we thought we needed and shrink it down to as small as possible? Let's talk about jobs. A job, and again, this stuff that we built in the last year, this jobs project, is really some incredible functionality. And it is a highly scalable, incredible set of management, tracking, reporting tools for moving content through workflows to get it translated and then be able to get the content out. And what does a job contain? It contains a title, description, and other meta information. It contains a source language, and it contains files. Now really, files, what it's really doing is it's a reference to files. And one of the things that we're working on right now is to ensure that we can handle file versioning so that we have a reference to not only the file in this job, but all of the different versions that maybe you've added in, or maybe have been added in through different branches of your source code repo. It's a really complex problem, and it's incredibly powerful, and I think we're close on it, but we're not quite there yet. But really, the files are then burst into strings. The files are broken down into strings. And in some cases, I might have 1,000 strings, but there's only 5 new strings that actually have to be translated because all of the other ones were translated or already in progress or whatever else. And so we're really bursting those into strings. And then those strings move through the job workflow for particular target languages with specific due dates. And each one of those can move in an arbitrary way. So that if you have a problem with a string, you go, hey, this string isn't translated right, that string as one atomic unit can move back and forth inside of these workflows. Nobody else really does this. It's incredibly powerful what we've built into this thing. But now we need to simplify it into very simple interfaces for people to not have to think about these kinds of things. I get anything wrong here, Max? We're pretty close enough? All right, awesome. One object we don't really have yet, but it's probably coming. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to say one other thing. Let's actually really talk about what a translation job is. Translation job isn't just saying, hey, can somebody translate this from English to French? Hello equals bonjour. There's a lot of stuff that comes before the translation. And this is taking that job and layering over the top of it your pre-translation metadata, your context, your TM leverage, extracting additional terminology that needs to be automatically extracting or layering over existing terminology on top of it and getting a cost estimate and probably a handful of other things that's really valuable data analysis that the job's underlying engine does before we ever say, you know, hey, Pierre, can you translate, you know, hello into bonjour? Now, then after the job is done, after the translation is done, the other thing the job does is post-translation analysis, such as what was the actual cost that went into this, and can we get a quality confidence score on top of this? That's incredibly valuable. Now, one object we don't really have yet, but I think it's something we're probably going to need to be thinking about, is the concept of a task. A translator sitting in his or her home in Paris or Sao Paulo or Beijing or Reykjavik does not care about the overall job. They don't care about all the other translators from different languages and all of the other different files. They care about one set of things. What are the strings that I need to translate at this particular workflow step? And a due date. I forgot about a due date there. And a due date. And I can pull all the other information out, like cost and things like that. But all I really care about is I've got these strings that I need to translate at this particular workflow step by whatever particular due date. And as a translator, when I log in, I only want to see the things that I care about, which really is a subset of jobs. And so if we have a workspace and a subset of a workspace are jobs, and a subset of a job is a task, that's one that we're probably missing today and would allow us to very quickly go, give me all the tasks that I, as a translator, sitting in Reykjavik, translating from English to Icelandic, need to be done by Tuesday, plus the ones that I could claim if I was ready to go do that. I'm hopeful that maybe we can do some things around jobs to be able to do this, but this might be a new object that we need to start thinking about and being mindful of. And Max and the tech and product team are talking about what that might look like. So let's get to the screenshots here. So this is our existing create project wizard, right? You say what kind of thing it is, what kind of project it is, and then you click next, and you add a couple languages, you add target languages, again, a holdover from the GDN, not really necessary. It may be appropriate to simplify this thing pretty dramatically. Now, this is just a mock-up. By the way, all of these are mock-ups. Don't look at the layout, don't look at the wording, just use this as an idea of the types of things that would need to go into this. But this is a project that would say, what's my project name or my workspace name? Something like marketing website, something like iOS app, something like conference in Tokyo, all right? And then give it a description. Well, what kind of project is it? Is it a files project where I'm going to manually push content and use an API? Is it a GDN project? Is it HubSpot? Is it Marketo? Is it Adobe Experience Manager? Is it connecting to my GitHub repository? What's my source language? Again, I don't need to tell you target languages right now. Who gets to access this? Is it the marketing team, or what's the team, including potentially translators that are focused on that type of content? What's the intended use? The intended use is connecting that decoupled linguistic assets, and this happens to be marketing content, where it's terminology and style guides and glossaries and TMs that are part of marketing content. And what's my budget on this? We may add a couple other things, due dates for this project if a project has a due date, but the idea here is this is a way of taking all of these decoupled resources, and decoupling is the right way to do it. Some of them are not decoupled yet, like the teams, and bundling them together into something that I can then govern how these projects and workspace happen, and then be able to use the appropriate assets, store the appropriate assets, and report on them accordingly. Now, imagine, if you will, this is the part where you're going to need to use a little bit of imagination and play along a little bit here. Imagine, if you will, if the entire SmartLink interface was one page. One page. This is it. This is the one-page interface. No left-hand navigation. Now, in reality, it's going to be more than one page. But the way my analogy for this is, everybody here is probably using Facebook. You know, what's the one page that you use on Facebook? You use the news feed. That's it. Now, yes, there's a way that you can click on the pictures of that, your friend's cute puppy, and pull up all the pictures of their puppy and cycle through it. And yes, I can go to a profile page of that ex-girlfriend that I still don't know why she broke up with me, and browse her life and everything else that's going on there. But for the most part, I use the news feed, right? That's what I usually use with this. This is your news feed. This is the thing that is action-oriented. It is your jobs. It's jobs across all of my different projects. This is why I'm looking at Kiara, because I'm going to be really curious about what she's going to say at the end of this. Next week, we're presenting this to the S3 team, and I'm giving Kiara an early look at this so then she can provide some feedback before next week on this. But this is where I want to be able to see all of the jobs across all of my projects, not what we do today where you've got to click into a project, do your stuff, click back out of the project, go into the next project, do your stuff, click back out of it. And the watch list kind of is a way to be able to grab some different things across different projects and say, I want to watch it, but it's manual. I've got to proactively go and do it. And you know, reality, no one uses it. None of our customers use it, or at least not many of them use it. Do you use it, Kiara? No. All right, good enough for me. So, so this is the idea of, can I filter by certain projects, and then can I have other filters to be determined, but that are simple and easy to understand? Things like, what are my jobs awaiting authorization? What are my jobs that were recently completed? What are my jobs that, you know, that my jobs that have issues? What are jobs that I've archived? You know, a variety of different things, so I can see at a glance what those things are and have appropriate actions right here on the spot. When a job is awaiting authorization, what's the most likely thing I'm going to want to do? Authorize that job, right? And when I do authorize that job, I might potentially want to see what that cost information looks like associated with this job, because maybe it came in through automation, maybe it came in through, you know, somebody who I'm the reviewer, I'm the approver on this, and I need to approve this part of it. If a job was recently completed, what are some of the types of things that I might want to do when a job is recently completed? What's probably the most important thing I want to do with it? Download the files. Awesome, thank you. What are some other things I might want to do with it? Possibly archive it, right? It's done. So give me all of those things at a glance with one click that are the most prominent, most important things for us to do. But what about all the left-hand navigation over here? Where'd that go? I think we can kill it all. I think we can get rid of all of it, every single bit of it. And across the top here, I just hit my 30-minute mark, I think, Max. I'm going to run a little bit long here. I think across the top here, I still have projects, I still have team, I still have reports, I still have assets, I still have settings, but we've added something important called integrations, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So if I wanted to upload files and create a job, I want something that looks more like our self-service application. I upload my files, I give it a name, I select the project, unless it's obvious what project that I'm using. I give it a description, give it the languages that I want, because this is a job, not a workspace, so I do need to know the target languages now. I click next, and I get all of my information here. How many files, how many words, what's the cost going to be, what's my context coverage, all that layering that we have all those back-end APIs for. And then by default, I probably need to use my default workflows. But if I want to get fancy and say, actually, I need to change this up in some of the workflows, let me do that. And then let me make one of three choices. Let me either say, whoa, that's too expensive, cancel. Let me say, well, that's too expensive, let me make a couple changes and go back and adjust some files and adjust some languages. Or, yep, let's do this thing and authorize this thing right here. Now, there's a fair amount of work to get this right and to not leave exhaust and trash around, because we need to create a job in order to do these calculations on the back end, and that's fine. but then we don't want to have to ask the user to clean it up afterwards. But can we agree that just conceptually, even though 80% of our customers use automation, which is what we want, the times when you're doing manual, isn't this a much nicer user experience than the 23 steps I described before? Absolutely, right? No question, right? Yes, we're all in agreement? Anybody not in agreement? All right, there's work that has to happen behind the scenes to do this, but that's one of them. Now, here's my jobs list. In theory, this jobs list should just work. Content comes in, we don't care where it comes from. It came from AEM, came from GitHub, came from people uploading files manually, came from any number of different places where this content came in, came from video content. And what do we want to do? How are we going to manage this? In theory, the content should come in and boom, it should just work. It should just go through, the translators get notified, all the stuff is layered over the top of it, it gets translated, the actual costs are recorded, the quality confidence scores are recorded, and it's done. And I download my files and move on. But what happens when it's not? Well, here's where I'm going to need to drill in. And so I'm going to click on one of these jobs. And even though I said it's a one-page application, from time to time, I'm going to need to go to a different page to take a look at some stuff. So here I am in my jobs detail view. Now, again, don't worry too much about the layout or the typography or the color schemes or whatever. But think about this as that when I went from this page and I clicked on that, swoosh, just like you do today, this whole job came over. And now I can think about this job holistically. I want to check on the languages, the files, potentially deal with individual strings, but we're burying that. We're making it not as front and center as the job itself. Maybe look at where content is in workflows. Maybe look at some of the statistics associated with this, and then see what the quality confidence score that was associated with this job when it was done, and some of the things I can help with to make better quality translations, like context, for example. So let's look at these. And again, the only time you should have to go in here is when you're like, something's not working on this job. Let me go figure out what the problem is. Or I really want to see what the quality confidence score was on that and why it was only a 67 instead of a 98. Let me go figure that out. So we are intentionally pushing that complexity lower so that most people operate from this page, and only by exception do you operate from this page right here. Think about your Uber experience. When you go out on the corner of 37th and Broadway and you say, I want an Uber to come pick me up, there's not a person that's going, hey, Welde's on 37th and Broadway, who's available? Let's send a car over. That happens automatically. But there is a person when something bad happens that is dealing with what those issues are and what those problems are. So let's break each one of these things down. One thing I might want to look at is languages. And if I see that certain languages are moving along nicely, but one of them is not, what might I want to do? I might want to figure out why is that not. So I click on the language or I click on an action item. Again, don't get too hung up on what the specific buttons are. And then now I can see the breakdown that across French, there might be 4 different files or a whole bunch of different workflows or whatever. I can see that breakdown and I can see that, oh, this person can't start. Let me figure out why. Do I need to reassign this project, this task? Do I need to split the task? Do I need to change the due date? What are the specific actions that I might need to do right here on the spot for this particular problem? All right. Now, in addition to languages, I might want to look at the actual files. And so, rather than the big, massive file list that we have today, instead with that is I've got files that are limited to a particular job. Now, there will be a global search. There will be a universal search where I can search for strings and files and team members and a whole bunch of other stuff. But most of the time, I want to look at files that are part of this job. Here are my files. I might want to download a file. I might want to download the translations. I might want to remove a file. I might even want to say, hey, you know what? Let's take these 2 files and split them into a different job. Let me go do that right now on here because of my resources or cost or any number of things that I want to do, but I can manage this. So that's languages, that's files. Let me now jump to strings. We want to move people away from the concept of strings. Strings are so granular that most people probably don't need to be thinking about them or dealing with it. When I'm ordering a sandwich, I don't really care about the cheese and the turkey and the lettuce and the tomato and all those things. I want the sandwich. Now, those things go into it, but I don't necessarily want to manage each and every aspect of those things. I care about the sandwich as a whole. Similarly, here are the strings, but sometimes you might have to add an instruction or exclude a string or do a variety of different things. And so we're going to move our list view and probably rebuild what I think has probably become a bit of an antiquated list view and use it on the new Elasticsearch-driven list view here, and move that into our job experience. And what you'll notice here is I do have this filter here. This is a placeholder for an Expedia style, kayak style, another part here of a filter. This is another reason why I don't want a whole bunch of chunky left-hand navigation to the left of here. Nobody likes navigation that's immediately followed by another navigation right here. Let's keep our global navigation that is account-wide up here, and then use these filters in a very sophisticated way if I need to be able to do filters on here. Of course, I'm still going to need string-level actions and bulk actions on these things. Those APIs exist right now, and I know it's going to be work to take these list views and be able to pull those into this particular part of it. Now let's go to workflows. This is a view that a lot of our localization managers and even our localization managers here at SmartLink use every day, where they want to know what is going on with this individual content at a particular step, including where content needs to be assigned and where content may be stuck. And if I saw, for example, that all of this stuff, all of my words were moving towards my 1,000 words over here, and we're getting pretty close to being published, but for some reason, Italian was still way over here and we weren't making good progress on this, I might want to click on it. I might want to see more information about what's going on, but I might also want to click on it again, and in a similar way, take very specific actions about what's going on with that content and why isn't it moving along? Is it because the person's sick? Is it because they're just not doing it? Did they not respond to it? Can I reassign it? Is it too much? Do I need to modify the due date? And give task-oriented specific actions towards driving that process. Next one is statistics. This is a chart I don't love. This is one that our customers seem to love. I don't get it. We might, I'd love to try to pull this out of here completely, but people seem to like the fuzzy breakdown of what this is. I do understand that a translator might want to see, for my specific task, how much of the translation memory leverage am I actually getting and what am I going to get paid for this? But this one where I can see these fuzzies across every single language, man, I would love to simplify. And I would love to have the hard conversations about who really needs this, and can we either pull it completely or can we bury it? But for right now, it may end up as one of the tabs on the top of our job detail. And then quality. A little bit unspecified right now, but there's a lot of work that's going on today around quality confidence score and the quality that's going into this. And this is where I want to see what was the quality of this particular job and how can I make it better? Think about it like a credit score. Hey, well, how come your credit score went down? Because you opened too many accounts, because you have too much open credit, because your Equifax account was hacked, whatever the case may be. Think about it as the things that tell you how you can potentially improve your score in the future. Issues is going to be a global item that will allow you to, from much like your Facebook notifications, that I can grab issues either globally across all of my projects or on a specific project, and then I can see them and I can dispatch them right through a dialogue. I'm going a little fast here because I'm sorry that I'm taking up so much time on this. The integrations page. This is what we want our integrations page to look like, both on the marketing side to show people, look at all these incredible integrations that we have, but also inside of the product. So I can go to my global area and go, yeah, I'm ready to do my integration here. I want to do my Marketo integration here. So I'm going to connect Marketo by clicking on this thing, or I'm going to click on Google Translate, and I'm going to get right here the ability to connect that integration right directly in here. Through Marketo, I might OAuth in, or I might add my API key. And what I'm doing is I'm registering that integration with my SmartLink account. And I'm giving it all that information here. We're not doing it, right now, we do it like if I wanted to add an MT service, I'd go, let me go to the step to add an MT service. Let me pick Google Translate, and then let me do it all right here. What I'd rather do is have all those integrations in one dedicated integration place, see all of my integrations, add my information there, and then when I come to this page right here, the only things that show up in my list here are my integrations. The only thing that show up when I create a project, and I say what kind of integrations are Marketo, AEM, and GitHub, because those are the things that I specified as my integrations from there. The beauty of this, guys, is that suddenly everything becomes a job, and that we will have hopefully thought of every aspect of how we bring content in, organize it, collate it, layer the metadata on top of it, get it organized for translation, and then afterwards do all the analytics and scoring and everything else that's associated with it. And then we can tell third-party platforms, your job is to take your third-party platforms and your native objects and map them to our job model and be able to push and pull content in and out of that. And if it turns out somebody doesn't have the ability to grab context or whatever, then inside of this integrations description, it says, includes all the following things. Unfortunately, Marketo doesn't support blah, blah, blah. When they do, we'll update it from here. But we can tell customers, here's how we, and inside of our API documentation and our training documentation, here are the best practices for how you build an integration into Marketo and so on. That's the summary. I want to focus on, or here's the summary, focus on customer-focused product experience, scalable performance, and also a sustainable business. There will be changes on this. We don't want to build this. We don't even want to build this. This is kind of where I think we are today. I don't think we're here. I do think we're kind of getting into this area. Let's get it back to that. It's not the simple knife, but it's something that has the right balance between performance and utility, and that's it.